Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Life in the Red podcast presented by the Lincoln Journal-Star. Big news today. Jordy Bahl coming to Nebraska, officially transferring from Oklahoma. So big news on the softball and volleyball front. Luke Mullin, your host, Amie Just, and Wilson Moore here with you as usual. And this is huge news. You wrote, it's one of the biggest, transfer portal moves of all time. Jordy Bahl, the nation's best college softball pitcher, coming to Nebraska. Let's just jump in. I mean, immediate reaction to that big news.
It was an expletive. So can't say it, but y'all can probably guess which one it was. It's holy something. Was the first thing that I thought on Monday when she announced that she was going to transfer home, right? So on Monday when she said that, she didn't say explicitly where she was going. Everybody kind of inferred that it would be here. But she didn't say, so couldn't assume anything, right? Because you never know. Sometimes people do wild things, including, leaving Oklahoma in the first place is pretty wild. So, but yeah, no, I think I texted Wilson my immediate reaction.
Yeah, and I think it was what you just said it was.
Yeah.
Less, you didn't censor yourself in the text, but
Of course not. Of course not. But gotta be nice to the listeners. But yeah, no, I mean, as I wrote in my column, there is no comparison out there for what has just happened. The closest present day you could hypothetically get would be USC's Caleb Williams, who, reigning Heisman Trophy winner, transferring to Maryland. That would be the closest hypothetical, and yet that doesn't come close because he's not a two-time national champion. I tried to come up with some potential comparisons, and Zach Edey, Purdue's big man, is from Canada, so can't really transfer home. In women's basketball, Angel Reese from LSU, she was at her not hometown, but home state school before she transferred to LSU, so that wouldn't quite make sense. So yeah, just present day, not really a great comparison for that, which is amazing because the most outstanding player at the Women's College World Series, she has only lost 2 of her starts in the last 2 years. I mean, almost 400 strikeouts, through almost 300 innings pitched. She is phenomenal. And for her to go from a program like Oklahoma, which has won 3 straight titles, and then I believe 6 titles in the last 10 years, the powerhouse of college softball, to come to Nebraska, who, hasn't made the College World Series in quite a long time and definitely hasn't been to the final game in almost 40 years. So, yeah, for a lot of words that I just said, I'm still speechless.
Yeah, so let's get into some of the reasons why this is such a big move. Of course, you briefly mentioned, her success there at Oklahoma has just been incredible. In those 2 years, 44-2 record, ERA of 1, 397 strikeouts, just under 300 innings pitched. So obviously a workhorse there in the circle, as you kind of expect your dominant pitcher to be. Oklahoma, as you mentioned, those back-to-back national championships, have an NCAA record 53-game win streak. She pitched lights out the entire NCAA tournament, especially in the Women's College World Series. So really, really interesting, as you mentioned, to see a player moving like that. But Wilson, you followed the Nebraska softball team, this last year. What was your immediate thoughts when you knew that the nation's best player was coming back to Nebraska?
Yeah, I was shocked, just like Amie said. It's hard to overstate what this does for Nebraska next season. They go from a solid team, a fringe tournament team with some holes, some question marks, to immediately the Big Ten favorites. Possibly, this might be their best chance at going to Oklahoma City since the last time they went in the early 2010s. It's so much changes with one player coming in. That's what Jordy Bahl does. They have maybe the best pitcher in the country, and suddenly just a completely different perspective. Ronda Revelle at the last game of the season, when the season ended in Stillwater, Oklahoma, was talking about, we took a step forward this year. We want to take another step forward. Jordy Bahl is a pitcher that allows you to skip steps. And I think that's the big thing. She's, 2 or 3 years of eligibility left too?
Yeah,
Two.
two
Yeah.
to play, or 3 to play 2. So in the ungodly event that something happened, 2 to play, or 3 to play 2.
Yeah, and those 2 years, that is Nebraska's window now.
And this is only the beginning. A player of her caliber will naturally draw other players of high caliber here. So this is just the first domino. It would not surprise me if Nebraska picked up other commitments from other talented softball players who want to play with Jordy. So yeah, it's already been a really interesting offseason, but it can continue to be a really interesting offseason.
It's funny too, because we sat here a couple times talking about, how are they going to replace Courtney Wallace? And they just go out and, get the most dominant pitcher all season. So that definitely answers those questions, who's going to eat up those innings, be that key pitcher. But, there's kind of this question too, like how or why is that happening? And admittedly, we haven't talked to Jordy. She would have all the answers for that. But what we do know is from what she said, just that desire to be closer to home, and also just the strong relationships that she's had with this Nebraska coaching staff.
Yeah, so she committed to Nebraska when she was in 8th grade. You can't do that anymore. That is against NCAA rules. And she had been committed to them for a long time before deciding to reopen things up in 2019. And she got a ton of interest. If you all remember, she led Papio to 3 straight state titles and 2 straight undefeated seasons. So, there were all eyes on her, and she got a ton of offers from a ton of powerhouse programs. Washington, for one, the list continues. Nebraska was still very interested in her, obviously. But she ended up choosing to go to Oklahoma, and it couldn't have worked out better for her. She's had so much success there. And yeah, it's just one thing that is really important to her, as she talked about, is relationships, and the relationships that she has with her family. She's got an older brother and 2 younger brothers, and her parents. And as it pertains to the Nebraska coaching staff, Ronda Revelle is still here, and then so is pitching coach Lori Sipple. And I think that is really important too, because that's who was recruiting her all the way back when.
For sure. And thinking about her softball journey a little bit, that time at Papio, everybody knew she was going to be a superstar, right? I think she had like a 0.3, like 0.2 ERA. It was just incredible.
Something insane like that.
2-time Gatorade Player of the Year. And
2-time for Nebraska, and then the National Gatorade Player of the Year her senior year as well. So everybody knew who she was, and it's just amazing how much she has continued to excel and succeed.
And to that point too, I remember she was the Cornhusker State Games special guest right after high school. She hadn't even pitched collegiately yet, and everybody around the state, around Lincoln, people who follow athletics knew how special Jordy Ball was. So to see her coming here to Nebraska will be incredible. What do you think this kind of means for the atmosphere around this the softball program next year?
So Nebraska was, and I put it in my column, the specific number, but they were in the top 30 for attendance this year for, around the NCAA. They averaged 1,000, a very nice, neat round number, for each home game. And their ballpark seats, 2,500, something like that, Wilson? So
that sounds right. That's not based on anything, but just eyeballing it.
So I would imagine that the ballpark is going to be very full next season. I don't know if Nebraska can dethrone Oklahoma in terms of attendance, but they're going to vault up there for sure. And people are going to want to watch her play. If you have the means and you want season tickets for softball, I would figure that out ASAP. Because there's going to be demand to get into those games. It's going to be hard to find those $6 tickets.
Yeah, first home game, first Big Ten game, those late season games, those are going to be really fun, really hot tickets. What I'm interested to, and I'm sure this is kind of a little bit more guesswork right now. We won't know until you talk to Coach Ravel. But what I'm wondering is she going to be able to hit a little bit more? Because the demands at a program like Oklahoma. I mean, they recruit so well. Obviously, you win national title in a row. I mean, they have tons and tons of great hitters, and Jordy still got 8 at-bats as a freshman, 32 at-bats her sophomore year. Do you think that might be part of the equation here?
It'll be interesting to see how that works out. And yeah, like you said, we're not going to know until a little bit later. Rhonda Revelle showed a willingness to kind of cycle through, who's the designated player. It was Courtney Wallace a lot at the end of the season, but we saw Alina Felix get some time in there, Dakota Carter, Talia Tokheim, who was great for about 2 weeks as a freshman before getting injured. I wonder if she's kind of the default incumbent just for the way she hit or early in the season. But yeah, that'll be an interesting spot. I think to that point with, what Nebraska asks of her if she hits, what you talked about filling Courtney Wallace's role. I think in a perfect world, the Huskers don't push Ball quite as hard as they did Wallace. Courtney Wallace pitched more than 200 innings, and it was out of necessity more than anything. Kaylin Kinney was injured. She'll be back. She got a redshirt year. And a couple of the recruits coming in, the incoming freshmen, are two-way players, pitchers. So I think the hope on Nebraska's side is they have a little more pitching depth this upcoming season than they did last year, and don't have to push Ball to the 200 inning mark like they did Wallace. But yeah, it'll be interesting to watch what they expect of her, what they ask of her, especially considering her first year at Oklahoma, she did deal with some injuries.
Yeah, no, great point. I mean, you got to manage that stuff over the course of the season. A lot of demands, being that key starting pitcher. So good point there. And like you said, I mean, it elevates things. Nebraska last made it to Women's College World Series in 2013, but a little bit of a smaller goal first. Big Ten. Obviously, there's some changes, within the conference. Teams are losing players, adding players of their own, but you have to imagine this addition puts Nebraska right up there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Especially, Northwestern, the defending champ, lost some major contributors. It's kind of open, and Nebraska, there's no one stopping Nebraska from jumping into that spot.
For sure. So we will see what other perhaps offseason additions Nebraska softball can make. Big news there with Jordy Bahl joining the fray, but not the only big news this week from a Jordan. The Nebraska volleyball team, Husker volleyball legend Jordan Larson. She will be Nebraska's third assistant coach for the 2023 season. Jalen Reyes and Kelly Hunter, of course, the other two. And this move, it kind of just makes sense, right? I mean, she is as decorated as you can get in a player, and she was looking to get some coaching experience.
Yeah, so she is at the age of 36 now, still the best American volleyball player, period. She is still incredibly dominant. She is vying for her 4th Olympics for next year. That's why we had to do the Zoom with her yesterday. She's not here right now. She's training, playing with one of the international circuits that she's in. And then after that, she'll get 2 weeks off, and then we'll go to Poland for the Olympic trials, basically, to see who, which teams will make the Olympics for Paris next year. So, and she will probably be on that team. So she's got one of the rare Olympic feats. She's got an Olympic gold, an Olympic silver, Olympic bronze, and she has won just about every accolade you could possibly win in a volleyball uniform, regardless of where you are playing. She is amazing. She is phenomenal. Just grab a thesaurus, honestly. Every word pertaining to good, great, is applicable for her. So for Nebraska to get her as their third assistant coach is incredibly important. And this has been in the works for a couple of years. She and John Cook have been kind of talking behind the scenes about, bringing her back here. And obviously with the NCAA changing the rules to add a third assistant coach, not just for volleyball, but for baseball as well. And good, that is you need to do that. You need more assistant coaches. It's not fair that football has like 90 million and volleyball and baseball we had 2 paid assistants. So sorry for the tangent there, but I mean, this is just awesome. Spoke with John Cook today. He said that the reaction when he told the players, some of them cried. They were just so overwhelmed by the fact that not just the best former Nebraska volleyball player, but the best volleyball player, period, in America is going to coach them. It's, I mean, shocking.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if so many, I'm sure, young athletes, grew up playing volleyball, seeing Jordan Larson, maybe not, she wasn't necessarily an idol, but she's one of the best. And now she's coming to coach you. And oh yeah, her jersey number's retired here at the school too. So, I mean, an all-time great at the school, internationally. I mean, I think the fact that she's going for 4 straight Olympics, I mean, that is just incredible. Regardless of sport, I'm sure, that's a pretty small list of people who have accomplished that. And in regards to her coaching too, I think it's a great step for her. Had briefly kind of been a volunteer assistant at Texas and then kind of made her way into Nebraska, worked with the teams at Midland and Elkhorn North. I know that Elkhorn North really appreciated having her there on the bench and helping the team with that in that season. And so getting that chance to be an assistant coach, it's going to be interesting too, because she does have to work around those Olympic commitments, anything else going on. But just the potential there, working with a hitter like Lindsey Krause or Harper Murray, I mean, you have to think that the way that she can elevate those players is going to be pretty special.
Yeah, Merritt Beeson talked about that today. And she is over the moon to learn from Jordan. So one of the things that's going to work to Nebraska's benefit is they use this website software thing called Volumetrics, and it has all of your film on there, and you can write on it and give notes and do feedback. And so you can do that from anywhere. So like if Jordan goes to Korea next week, like she can still watch video and give feedback and chat with the pin hitters in real time, regardless of where she is, as long as she has Wi-Fi. So that's going to be really helpful. Video chats and Zooms and FaceTimes and all of those things are going to be really beneficial in the interim before she gets back in September.
Absolutely. So one of the best in the business, they're joining the Nebraska volleyball coaching staff. And a few other updates that we have for other Nebraska sports before we close out this episode. We were talking about the track and field outdoor championships in our last episode. Those did wrap up, and the official final placements, by the way, the Husker women finishing in 8th place there at the outdoor championships, best finish since 4th place in 2006, and also a very, very respectable finish for the men as well, finishing 17th, best mark since 2016. High jumper Tyus Wilson and hurdler Darius Luff, both first team All-American honors. Just credit to that entire Nebraska track and field coaching staff. I mean, two of their best finishes in a long time.
Yeah, like I said on a podcast previous, what Justin St. Clair and the staff have been able to do is incredibly phenomenal. All of those throwers, following Justin here and them doing incredibly well this season. Just a testament to how the not players, this is track, how the athletes view him and respect him. And I can't wait to see what the future for Nebraska track looks like, because in year 1, pretty dang good.
Yeah, a lot of talent coming back. So we will look forward to that indoor season there in the fall. And for the Nebraska baseball team, just a quick staffing change to update you there on. Pitching coach Jeff Christie, no longer with the program. He parted ways with Nebraska, but familiar face will be replacing him, a former Nebraska assistant, longtime Texas A&M head coach Rob Childress. Him and Will Bolt, they have been 2 peas in a pod for a very long time. Bolt was Childress's assistant coach there at A&M for about 5 years. After he left that spot, he came back here to Nebraska, served as the director of player development. So Childress taking over in that role, I think, will be fantastic. Very experienced coach, knows what he needs to do to improve that pitching staff. And like I said, him and Bolt are very well aligned.
Oh, yeah. I mean, no-brainer pickup here. Absolutely. I mean, you have to be, regardless of what sport it is, football, volleyball, any sport, you have to be on the same page as coaches. You look at Matt Rule and how he brought in a lot of people who have worked with him before or played for him. I mean, John Cook and all of the assistants that he has had over the years that he has either worked with or they played for him. Jordan Larson, who we literally just talked about, played for him.
Kelly Hunter.
Hunter,
Yep.
And so this, when you work together with somebody before, you know what to expect out of each other, and it's a seamless transition if you get along and they get along well. So that's the way it goes in athletics. And so no brainer. We'll see how it goes.
Yep. Husker baseball moving forward there. Rob Childress as the new pitching coach. And a couple quick commits to touch on here for the football team. For the 2024 class, now up to 9 commits after punter Camden Cook, son of former Husker, longtime NFL punter there with the Ravens. Sam Cook, he joins the 2024 class. Very highly regarded, at different punting, kicking camps and whatnot. Very well trained, obviously, with his dad and some other trainers he's been working with. But I think kind of the interesting piece there is Nebraska added Tristan Alvano, in-state scholarship kicker, in the 23 recruiting class. You're bringing in a punter in 24, and Brian Buschini still has 2 years of eligibility remaining. Whether he returns for next year, we don't know yet, but potentially that's 3 scholarships for specialists if Buschini does come back. I mean, obviously there's a lot of scholarships to work with, but pretty good investment from Nebraska there on the special teams unit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think the special teams was pretty solid a year ago. Timmy Bleekrode was good. Brian Buschini was solid. And yeah, it's clearly a priority for this coaching staff.
And the other big pickup, 2025 recruiting class, Omaha North defensive lineman Tyson Terry. Just been super impressed with him the last couple of years, just watching him play, watching him develop. I mean, he's already a 2-time state champion in the heavyweight wrestling class. Really impressive out there. And he's been a varsity contributor since a freshman at Omaha North. One interesting tidbit I had about this, I did put it in some of my takes, but talking to Omaha North head coach Larry Martin, he mentioned that when Nebraska was recruiting Tyson a few months ago, when they were making these visits out to schools, January, when they had first kind of gotten their rounds around the state, defensive coordinator Tony White, he stopped by Omaha North. He was making the rounds through Omaha, and he was like, where's Tyson? I want to talk to Tyson. Well, he was out at a wrestling meet there at the Metro Conference. And so White said, hey, no problem. I'll keep going out places. He said, I'll come back later tonight. And he ended up going to that wrestling meet, seeing Tyson Terry there, making that connection, which I think showing that intent, means a lot. And Ed Foley also doing a great job. He's visited Omaha North multiple times. Terry, by the way, he came to Lincoln, took an official visit, and made that decision. So two 2025 commits. Excuse me. Too many twos here. Tyson Terry, Caden Vermoss, both in-state guys. Vermoss there from Miller North. So I think off to a very strong start with that class for the Nebraska football staff. And more recruiting coming in this weekend. There will be visitors. There's going to be a big Friday Night Lights camp. So make sure to stay tuned, journalstar.com. I'll be there. See if there's any big recruits, any big news. But I think that's all we got after this important impromptu episode. We had to let the people know Jordy Ball's coming.
I mean, if there is a time to do an emergency podcast, it is the week that Nebraska gets Jordy Bahl and Jordan Larson. What a week for women's sports.
Yeah, two greats coming to Nebraska. So make sure to stay tuned. Wilson on Softball News. I'll be watching the recruiting scene. More stuff to come at journalstar.com. And we don't know. We'll see eventually. We'll be back soon enough with any updates that we have. But appreciate all of you listeners and viewers. This has been the Life in the Red podcast. We'll catch you next time.